Liquor was everywhere during Prohibition Philadelphia. Philadelphians loved to get around this law in any way they could.
If you're walking down South Street on just about any night of the week, it's wide open.
There's a thriving numbers racket, which is a gambling scheme run by organized crime.
There's street preachers, there are pimps, there are clubs galore. It's the Roaring Twenties in Philadelphia.
The practice of drinking alcohol in Philadelphia through those years was pretty steady, and I would say Philadelphia was soaking wet.
Afraid of their city veering out of control, outraged citizens appeal to the federal government for help.
One-time General Smedley Butler has been appointed Philadelphia Chief of Police. And according to the colorful Butler, fighting crime is the same as fighting war. Smedley would smoke out any hoodlums hiding here. Little later, Butler orders gigantic searchlight to be erected on tower overlooking Philadelphia. Light of 200 million candle power searches city streets for hoodlums.
Which Philadelphia will the spotlight expose? Butler's searchlight is a nightly reminder of a city at odds with itself. High above the conflicted city, John Wanamaker calls a group of reporters into his office. On his 81st birthday, the business pioneer and moral reformer is gripped by a dream: the Fairmount Parkway. Once a polluted district of massive factories, now demolished to build monumental museums and centers of culture.
Getting rid of the physical slums that exist downtown is all part of the larger project of turning the city into a Wanamaker temple of civic works.
But after decades of demolition, nothing on the Parkway has yet been built.
He's thinking, what will it take to get everything finished and to finally have that center of the city that he'd always dreamed of?
Wanamaker reaches back to a moment of triumph from 1876. Fill the Parkway with a World's Fair to celebrate the 150th birthday of America.
All of the people who studied the Parkway as a site for the World's Fair agreed with Wanamaker that that was the best site. That's where it should happen.
Wanamaker and other Parkway advocates assume neighborhood leaders will go along.
The reformers never do what they're supposed to do. They talk good games, the cause is right, but who's knocking at the door for them? They don't come down into the neighborhoods. People may have appreciated what was being said if they could relate the Parkway to the political system as they knew it. Otherwise, it was somebody talking high off the hat about something totally out of their world.
In the deepest part of South Philadelphia, known as the Neck, the brothers George, Edwin, and William Vare come of age on their family's pork and produce farm, hauling slop and carting waste.
Bill Vare was always a kid from the Neck. It was a rural backwater. In fact, William Vare lost one of his older brothers who was attacked by a pig.
Used to the rough work of the farm, the Vares begin to accumulate city excavation and paving contracts. Soon after, they move into street cleaning and the collection of trash. which they dump along the banks of the Delaware River.
The Vere brothers made money, they spread some of that money out, and they got what they wanted. Their power came from giving jobs to people and giving money to elected officials and feeding the populace.
The Vere brothers used their power to take over the Republican Party machine, the organization. By 1923, John Wanamaker is dead, and Bill Vere is the new city boss.
Bill Vere used to talk about the Philadelphia Republican machine as the greatest social welfare organization in the world. You need a ton of coal, you got a ton of coal. You need somebody to pay your doctor's bill, we'll pay the doctor's bill. You got a smart kid, maybe we'll get you a scholarship. You get drunk, you need to get off in the police magistrate, we'll arrange that. All we ask in return is your vote.
People say, oh, the organization's corrupt. I got my kid a job, got the old man a job. I mean, if something happens to the family, the ward boss, the organization can take care of it, and I can live with that kind of corruption.
The Veres throw their annual Christmas parties at the Alhambra Theater on Passyunk Avenue and give out free toys and candy to kids who might otherwise not see anything. And these kids, once they are sort of caught up in the Vere myth, can stay with it for the rest of their lives.
The myth means the Vere brothers don't have to depend on old money interests on election day. They don't even have to give lip service to Wanamaker's dream of a World's Fair on the Parkway.
By 1924, which was just 2 years before the fair, the political machine had done nothing to make it happen.
The organization was staffed by politicians who behaved like highly trained bird dogs. They obeyed orders, they asked no questions. If you don't do as you're told, you will lose your public office.
This system allows the Veres to run anyone they want for mayor, and they choose an old friend, Freeland Kendrick, who wins easily.
Kendrick becomes mayor just as the American economy is going into overdrive. Suddenly, there seems to be endless amounts of money in the city treasury to do all of the things that Kendrick wants to do.
Seizing the moment, the new mayor immediately advances plans to build a 13-line subway system, treat the city's dangerous drinking water, and, if he can convince Bill Vere, put on the 1926 World's Fair.
People would arrive at Broad Street Station across from City Hall, maybe with just a slip of paper, and people would say, well, go to South Street. And people would find each other through South Street.
As the Great Migration swells Philadelphia's black population to over 250,000, the largest by proportion of any northern city, the vaudeville circuit performer Bessie Smith arrives on South Street with her sister and her niece.
Bessie Smith was fearless. She had a big voice. They didn't have mics and so forth. And some middle-class African Americans and churchgoers called it the devil music. But the masses or grassroots people loved Bessie Smith.
Tens of thousands of rural black immigrants coming and settling in the city. And they're bringing cultured, cultivated African-American music and sort of low-down gut bucket blues and early forms of jazz and ragtime.
Bessie Smith's main subject in her music was about heartache, a stand-in for some of the disappointments that migrants had when they came to Philadelphia. The heartache, the disappointment over life not being exactly what they wanted it to be.
Newly arrived in the big city, Lucy Speece seeks employment in the homes of white families. But she and her children must make their home in a decrepit boarding house.
These homes don't have running water. Many of them have outhouses in the backyard, and this is in the middle of Philadelphia.
Deed restrictions and redlining by banks and insurance agencies force Black residents to live in specific areas of the city. Hotel, restaurant, and theater owners banned them from gathering in Center City's public spaces.
What African Americans in Philadelphia did was take the disadvantages of their lack of access to other parts of the city and instead create a thriving community in and around South Street. It's really a city within a city.
The flowering that happened in the 1920s was really the result of the first generation of Black people coming from the South, really having the ability to say, I choose you, I choose to be here.
The Vaire machine really cultivates Black votes in notoriously sketchy ways. Paying people to vote, having a prominent official, someone who's connected to the party, come into the local bar, local tavern on election day, buy everyone a round of whiskey if you go to the polls.
With alcohol illegal due to prohibition, the party machine makes it the highest priority to circumvent the law.
You have gambling and prostitution and bootlegging and speakeasies that are running wide open because they're paying kickbacks to the local precinct, which kicks back to the captain, which kicks back to the magistrate, which kicks back to the city committee.
Police Commander Smedley Darlington Butler makes it his mission to frustrate the racket across the city.
Butler calls all of the police to the Metropolitan Opera House on North Broad Street, and he basically tells them, I want you to go out there and I want you to start shooting gangsters.
Butler initiated something called a pounce policy, where he would literally send out teams to start raiding several of these speakeasies and distilleries at once.
My grandfather remembers there was a raid on a speakeasy somewhere off Kensington Avenue. Smedley Butler's men came down and they took out axes and they broke open the barrels of beer. Beer was flowing into the streets. My grandfather said that all the boys in the neighborhood who were there got down on their hands and knees and slurped up the beer out of the gutter. And my father asked him one time, he's like, so you watched this? He's like, I was down on my hands and knees too.
When he found that the police would not carry out his orders, he moved whole precincts. They hoped that they could control Butler. They couldn't control him.
Butler is now stepping on the toes of the Philadelphia police force, and therefore now stepping on the toes of Philadelphia's political machine.
Bill Vaire makes it clear to Kendrick that he's to blame for letting Butler loose. Fire him.
All the mayors were weak. They all answered to Vaire. He decided if they were mayor or not.
Mayor Kendrick now finds himself in a bit of a pickle.
Kendrick feels he has no choice but to fire Butler.
Butler, with great show, signs his letter of resignation. He takes the Colt 45 Army revolver, which Kendrick, a real gun fanatic, had given him, gives it to his assistant and says, give this to the mayor and tell him he can use it any way he wants to.
A politically damaged Kendrick has no choice but to give in to Vere. The organization boss declares that the sesquicentennial World's Fair will take place in his territory, deep in the neck.
With one fell swoop, Kendrick moves the World's Fair from the Parkway down to this mass of swamps and ash heaps in South Philadelphia.
The most difficult to get to, a place that was the hottest in the summer, infested with mosquitoes. Very often you get a foul smell coming from the garbage dumps.
With only 14 months to go until the opening of the World's Fair, almost no work has been done. And on opening day, only the 100,000-seat municipal stadium is ready. With no subway built to transport visitors to the fairgrounds, few come. Unlike the 1876 World's Fair, which drew 10 million people, this one is a failure from the start.
So 4 million people paying 50 cents apiece, that's $2 million? And the city spent officially $33 million? It's the flop heard round the world.
Financial loss from the sesquicentennial sends the city into fiscal crisis. Philadelphia abandons plans for new subway lines and cancels the construction of water treatment plants.
Philadelphia becomes a city that it never intended to be. It never intended to be a city that lived day to day putting bread in its mouth. Philadelphia intended to be a city that changed the world. Sometimes the only thing that will dethrone organized arrogance is total catastrophe.
By early 1929, the city was hemorrhaging money. The cumulative effect meant that Philadelphia entered the Great Depression almost a year before the rest of America did.
The 1929 stock market crash causes already weakened Philadelphia banks to fail. Bank failures lead to the swift closing of factories. One of every 2 manufacturing jobs in Philadelphia vanishes.
Philadelphia was the most intensely industrial city in the United States. When Philadelphia's industries collapse, you have huge unemployment.
When the plant goes, everything goes with it. The jobs, the housing values, the churches, the baseball teams, the bowling clubs, the schools. Working people, poor people suffer so desperately. They don't have food.
So people are losing their homes, needing to double up in small apartments.
The Vere organization and its allies in the private sector organize charity, but it won't be nearly enough.
If you had a committee person who had maybe 200 families in their division, more than one half of them would be out of work. So that the Republican machine was not able to provide that neighborhood-based aid that previously it had.
With nearly 300,000 people unemployed across the city, the new mayor, J. Hampton Moore, goes on a tour of South Philadelphia. He declares, "No one is starving in Philadelphia."
Total catastrophe. And they are completely unable to mobilize the resources to help the city cope.
For African Americans, the Great Depression was cataclysmic.
Seeking a decent place for her family, Lucy Speece rents a $5 a month apartment. A week after moving in, Spies notices that the front wall of her building bulges a full foot. One of Spies' neighbors begs their white landlord to fix it.
While Lucy Spies is cooking dinner, the walls buckle and then collapse. Lucy Spies and her 3 children are killed. 7 people total are killed.
The collapse transfixes a city not quite immune to tragedy and despair. It becomes a symbol of the incompetence of the organization. Philadelphia's working people start to band together across ethnic lines.
My factory working great-grandmother who made boxes and put half of her wages into the Bank of Italy at 8th and Christian couldn't get her money out during the Depression.
Bank of Italy, Bank of Calabrese, these banks were aligned with the Republican Party.
Once you lose your money, that's a good reason to change parties. And they had pitchforks and fire on sticks, and they wanted to burn the place down.
Even the wealthy real estate developer Albert M. Greenfield gives up on the Vair organization. Greenfield changes parties, intent on reversing his own losses and the city's direction. Other reformers join him, including Anna Brancato, a 29-year-old daughter of Italian immigrant grocers. Brancato decides to run for the state legislature to bring power back to the people.
Now's when the insurgency really develops. Polish Americans, Jewish Americans, African Americans, Irish Catholics.
These groups are snubbed, and they come back with a vengeance.
In that year and a half, 2 years, there's more legislation passed, more reforms passed than in any 2-year period in the history of the state of Pennsylvania.
Today, depression is a fading memory. Millions of men and women have found employment, and with it, confidence and hope.
The New Deal coalition forces the city to address the crisis of overcrowded and unsafe housing by forming the Philadelphia Housing Authority. The WPA and other New Deal programs put 100,000 Philadelphians to work, unleashing potential to create, inspire, and build.
The breath of fresh air that the Federal Works Progress Administration brings in is the ability to envision the city of Philadelphia as something more than people putting bread in their mouths.
In 1936, Albert Greenfield leads a successful effort to restore the city's role in national affairs. In front of an ecstatic crowd at Franklin Field, Democrats renominate Franklin D. Roosevelt for president.
Philadelphia is a good city in which to write American history. This is fitting ground on which to reaffirm the faith of the fathers.
Federal New Deal programs accomplish what the Vair organization has failed to do: build an airport, a full decade behind rival cities. The New Deal remakes Fairmount Park and gives Philadelphia a city history museum of its own. New Deal workers install the new Bridge Line subway across the Ben Franklin Bridge, construct a new main post office, a new federal building, and a new central high school. The WPA realizes John Wanamaker's dream: a parkway to capture Philadelphia's civic imagination.
To give to 1936 as the founders gave to 1776. an American way of life.
But President Roosevelt's pledge will not come easy in Philadelphia. Even after the deaths of the Vere brothers, their organization continues to dominate the government of the city. The struggle between paralysis and progress will consume Philadelphia for the next decade and far beyond.